Hello everybody, here we are today doing a season preview for the Los Angeles Kings, a team that has a new look, but we're wondering if they're going to get different results. So before we get started with it, please make sure to subscribe if you're new to me or hockey, whatever the case may be. That being said, let's get on into it. So last season, LA finished with 99 points and made the playoffs for the third straight year, but like clockwork, ended up getting bounced by the Edmonton Oilers in the first round. It's, disheartening, and this offseason was a bit weird as they were involved in a big trade where they shipped out a player that was on a long-term deal, and they are wondering if their interim head coach, that is now their head coach, is going to provide stability for them. So for this team, they had, a big change there in terms of the trade, and they're wondering now, of course, too, if they can actually break through in the playoffs. So with all that kind of being brought up, what are some storylines for this side going into the season? So the first storyline is, can Jim Hiller solve all their problems? I'm not necessarily saying that he's going to be able to solve every problem, but we saw Hiller come on in as the interim head coach last year and coach 34 games for the team, and they played at 104-point pace. That would be really nice to be able to crack 100 points and maybe set yourself up to be top 3 in the division. I know they've done that before, of course, but maybe even be 2 or something like that. It's all just going to be up there in the air. But I think the one thing that I really liked with Hiller was the fact that they were a pretty consistent team during his run. They didn't have a long losing streak hidden in there. They were able to have not a lot of embarrassing losses. The worst loss, I think, was that 7-0 loss to Buffalo. I believe that might have been his first game, but aside from that, it was a lot of, 3-goal losses if there was going to be a loss. Nothing too crazy. And I think the big thing we're looking at here is just having consistency, because while the Todd McLellan era wasn't necessarily bad, they were able to make a lot of, playoff runs, or at least they were able to make it to the playoffs. They weren't able to get the job done in the postseason, and they were a team that was sliding last year sometime in December into January, and that was a big issue about whether or not they were going to make the playoffs, which eventually led to Hiller getting the job in early February, and he was able to take over and see some results. And I'm kind of curious to see how things go too, as I want to see how he gives out minutes, and we see him giving a lot of minutes to Drew Doughty, as he played, I think, over 26 minutes a night with him. Matt Roy, who's now gone, ended up getting, I think, over 21 minutes a night. But I'm also interested, of course, too, to see how things work out with guys like Kevin Fiala. He was able to find decent success as well. Quentin Byfield is something that really interests me here. Quentin ends up signing a 5-year extension and had a career year. I'm hoping that he can take another step forward and help this LA side that wasn't necessarily as good as they were hoping to be. And if they are a more consistent team under Hiller, and some of these guys like Byfield are able to progress even more, and they're consistent and they're winning, and they get to the playoffs, I would consider this a very successful year one underneath him completely. And I would say that his job security is going to be locked right in if they are a consistent side that might actually able to get through into the second round, at least in the playoffs this year. Still a lot up in the air, and who's to say that they play at 104-point pace this year? I don't know, but I am hoping for good things. The second thing is going to be whether or not the bottom 6 is going to be their undoing. And we all know in sports, especially in hockey, you want to have depth. And in hockey, you want to have 4 scoring lines. You want to have, these top pairing defensemen that are just offensive juggernauts. And I think when you're looking at the Kings, the top 6 is going to probably be good enough to give you offense, of course, but the bottom 6 is where you're concerned, especially with the fact that outside of a guy like Doughty, last year, they didn't really have a lot of high-scoring offensive defensemen, if you will, so the bottom 6 is going to have to contribute a little bit here more, and I think this is where things get a little bit risky. You have a guy like Tanner Jeannot that is now in LA after previously being with the Nashville Predators and the Tampa Bay Lightning. He had a 24-goal season, I believe, early on in his career. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, but since then has failed to crack 7 goals. This is where you would like to see him have a career bounce back and maybe become, again, a 20-goal scorer that can provide some grit in the lineup, but be able to give you that contribution. Then you have other names as well, as you are seeing Warren Foegele. This is hopefully an addition by subtraction moment, as he played with the Edmonton Oilers. He has been able to have some decent seasons, and I think is coming off of his first 20-goal season in his career. So if both of those players are able to contribute to your bottom 6, you're very happy, especially if that is, again, more depth lost by the Oilers, as, of course, we talked about them recently, trading Cloud away to Buffalo, and then, of course, Foegele is going here to LA, a division rival. So that would be nice to possibly see Edmonton dip while you rise. And if Foegele can have another good year, you're going to probably be set as well on top of that too. Alex Turcotte is the most interesting out of these 3 players we've mentioned so far. Is a player you really would like to see progress here, and that's because of the fact that he only has 1 goal in 32 games played in the NHL. Now I'm going to say that a lot of this has been scattered over 3 NHL seasons, and I don't think he's got as many minutes as you would like to see. I want this to be a good year for him, and that's why I'm kind of hoping that Hiller can get some of these younger guys or these guys that were taken higher in the draft to progress a little bit faster than what we've seen with some of the players, and that is what you're going to be watching out for. Alexis Laferriere is going to be another one too. He had like 12 goals, something right around there last year. So if these players can all be a little bit more offensive minded, or at least be able to chip in more offensively, then you're going to be in a better spot. If they struggle, that's where I start to worry a little bit about the Kings. And then my third question is, are they too old? This seems a little bit weird when you're looking at NHL average age, as I believe they were like 17th in this time, but 2 out of their top 9 goal scorers were just 27 or younger last season, and one of those is gone in Pierre-Luc Dubois. So there is a lot of veteran experience at the top of this lineup that is contributing, and while not all of them are old, they certainly are above 25, and they haven't really been able to do a lot over the past few years. And when you do look at the fact that guys like Anze Kopitar and Drew Doughty are playing big roles for this team still, and you understand that they are 36 and 34, that's when you start to worry a little bit, because they're not under contract for too many years after this. I think both of them are under contract this year, next year at the very least, but you're wondering too, what happens if they don't contribute as much? What is going to be the case there? And that's where I start to worry a little bit too, because some of these other guys that are 27, 28, 29, 30 years old in the lineup might be getting close to hitting their ceiling if they might have already hit it. And that's where you look at this group and say, all right, you've got these older players that could be going in a couple years, and then some veteran players that are still possibly nearing their prime but might already be hitting their ceiling. What happens if we hit a wall in the next couple of years? And I know there's still younger players in this lineup that are getting their skates underneath them out on the ice, but there is an understanding that a lot of their forward group especially is going to have a lot of that experience, as well as some other guys too that aren't even contributing necessarily a whole lot offensively, guys like Gavrikov as well that are, a little bit older. This LA team being 17th for average age seems a little bit deceiving, and in a couple of years, that's where you say, if they haven't broken through in the playoffs, what happened in this rebuild? So just watch out for this a little bit and see how things play out. So overall, what are my thoughts on the Los Angeles Kings? Well, they are a side that's been able to make it to the playoffs 3 years in a row. They rank, I think, 13th in the league for wins over the past 3 seasons, which is good considering how big the league is. But they haven't really been dominant. There's not been that 50-plus win season. There's not been able to be the opportunity to get to the second round. And they were pretty streaky last year where they had a pretty bad run. However, I think this team has some potential. The power play was really good. I believe under Hiller, they were able to score, I think, 5 goals or more in 10 games that he was underneath them, which seems a little bit weird because they didn't score a whole lot of goals in terms of goals for per 60, so that's why I'm confused. But when I looked through, it looked like there was at least 10 games where they scored 5 goals or more, so the potential is there to be good, but you also are a little bit concerned. What if the power play dries up? What if, these players are going to have a down year? What if the bottom 6 doesn't contribute? What if the goaltending tandem doesn't work out? That's why I'm kind of scared about LA, because yes, they can play well defensively. Yes, they can probably be better on the power play than what I think they could be. But I still feel a little bit wary about the side, but I'm kind of going to go towards a route where Hiller is going to make them stable. They're going to play well defensively. They're going to be at least in the wild card hunt, if not possibly be top 3 in their division. If they're consistent and avoid that run of like 5 or 6 weeks where they were bad last year, they probably are good enough to finish top 3 in the Pacific this year, but I'm also just kind of wary about what we're seeing from them. They lost Roy. They, of course, have Doughty that is playing a lot of minutes as an older defenseman, so their blue line is going to be looking, a little bit odd to me, at least this offseason, or this season, I should say, and I still do have a lot of doubts about that bottom 6, so we'll see how it plays out. What do you think about the Los Angeles Kings? Do they make the playoffs this year? Are they a top 3 team in their division? And do they break through in the playoffs for the first time in a minute? Anyway, let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, and also please make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you're new. Check out my series for my other season previews at the end of this video. I'd really appreciate it. Everybody, please make sure to stay safe, and have a great night. And Eagle of Hawk, you alright?
Goodbye, Brigadiers and Brigadettes. This is your captain signing off. Have a great night.